the Lead Generation World podcast. My name is Michael Faree. Got a great show planned for you today. We've got Ethan Ewing from ProPair with us today. Ethan has been in the industry for, I think, about 15 years, or more actually, almost 20. But was on the lead sales side for 11 of those years, and now is 3 years ago launched ProPair, which really helps mortgage companies distribute leads effectively and more efficiently based on scoring models and all this sort of cool stuff that I will let him explain. And we'll get into that. We'll talk a little bit of shop about mortgage, lead buying, and lead gen. And we'll do that here in just a few moments. But I want to thank our sponsors for the podcast, Digital Media Solutions and LendingTree. And thank you for supporting the show as well. I do want to encourage you, as I always do, to make sure to register for Lead Generation World. It's right now it's $395. Prices do go up December 1st to $595. So if you want to save a couple $100, make sure you register this month and join a bunch of other lead generation professionals across multiple verticals from the buy side, the sell side, and the service provider side that are going to be at the show. I appreciate the consideration. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us and just go into our website, leadgenerationworld.com. But let's go ahead and get into the conversation with Ethan and talk a little shop. All right, welcome to the Lead Generation World podcast. I've got Ethan Ewing from ProPair, if I could talk correctly, from ProPair with me here today. Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. Great to be with you.
Yeah, man, I'm really happy you're able to join the podcast. You've been a staple in the industry for 15 years.
Yeah, I guess that's about it. Make me sound old.
I mean, let's kind of go through memory lane here. I think your initial entrance sort of into the space was on the mortgage side, right? You were a lender? You worked for a lender?
Yeah, way back when. Early in my career, I was a loan officer out of the gate. So in summers, I would sell loans and came up that way, and then moved out to California in 2000 and got involved with an online mortgage company.
Well, before you go on, I just noticed that you graduated with a history and a philosophy degree. Which, as I always make the joke, perfect for a loan officer.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely. I did not go to a vocational school, so it was a broad education. You learn to read and write.
Yeah,
and the philosophy stuff. Actually, it's funny. I've come back more recently in the last few years to philosophy, and some of that. I study a lot of East Asian studies, Confucian philosophy, and I've come back to a lot of that recently. So.
So you just sent me a book. I think segue. I can show you sent me this book.
Yes.
Is it actually it's backwards, isn't it? So you can't even.
I can read it. Yeah.
Oh, you can. Okay.
Yeah.
Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. We were talking last week about sort of daily routine and what I sort of do and my sort of need for getting out. For me, it's going for a run or a bike ride or whatever for about an hour, and I don't listen to any music, and it's sort of a meditation thing for me almost, but it really brings me back to focus of what I'm should be doing in the day. And it really is sort of the still moment for me halfway through my day that allows me to get back on track, get thoughts and going. And it's like that, what people say, the best ideas, come in the shower. Well, mine's sort of while I'm maybe running or biking or doing something like that. But tell me a little bit about this book.
Yeah. I mean, that book, I sent you that book. So he's the author that I've followed quite a bit over the last few years. I get a daily blog from him. But definitely a Stoic philosophy. So he's a Stoic philosopher. And that book kind of tends a little bit more towards the East Asian philosophies, Confucianism, stuff that I studied in college. And just, like you said, I mean, it's we all go through our daily rhythms and routines, and you're trying to optimize and, lead a fulfilled life. But but a lot of it is, it's noisy, right? It's really, really noisy. And so I think you and I we're fortunate in how in that we have our own businesses, and, you can dictate your days, and you can really dictate them around how you can be most effective. So books like that, and, I read a lot and pull from all different things, and there's nothing that's prescriptive and you follow. But yeah, definitely. I mean, it helped me to kind of shut some things out, to turn off some noise every morning.
Yeah.
I've made my kids listen to sports talk radio in the morning for the last year in our house, put on our Sonos, and over the last few months, I've just shut it off just to have some stillness and to have some quiet time, and let the kids reflect. And you become, I've noticed the one primary thing I've noticed, I've just become less reactive,
Yeah.
and more deliberate. And I think that's a really important thing, certainly for our business. We have multiple clients. We have a lot that we want to get done every day. So to be able to keep your head centered and to be able to maintain that deliberateness is helpful.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's a challenge of a lot of CEOs too, right? When there's so much pressure and anxiety and things to do, there's always something else. How to focus on what I guess what really matters, right? And then actually having that silent time for thought and reflection or whatever it may be. Because and we're going to jump ahead a whole lot, and I want to go back a little bit, but you just launched ProPair. What is it? 2 years ago now?
3 years, yeah, 3 years.
Is it three?
So we
Holy
just celebrated
mout!
3 years
Yeah.
in October. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So still startup mode,
Yeah.
right? I mean, a lot of development taking place, but being going off going off into starting your own company has a ton of stressful challenges, and balancing family and all that sort of stuff that really requires some focus on yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I sent it to you because, I mean, obviously we've known each other a long time, and I was most impressed. I think it was about a year and a half ago down at the Velocify, that little get together we had, and just watching you in a room full of, 40 industry veterans, and you had a very calm way to lead that conversation, and lead everybody through, the hardest part in any kind of group setting, which is to get people to start to open up and start to talk, because people start out pretty rigid, and it was really not. It was actually inspiring to watch you, because I'm thinking, wow, that's the way you open it up, and very calm and very deliberate and very thoughtful through it. And I know, like the rest of us, you have a lot of stuff coming at you all the time. And so anyway, when we were talking the other day, it's one of the values of reading and being exposed to a lot of books is then, there's different things you come across where you have different conversations with people, and it just makes you think, that may be a relevant read. So
Yeah, no, thank you for sending it. I'm gonna get to it actually this weekend, so I appreciate it. But good segue too, because you're going to be participating at Lead Generation World, and in fact, we're doing something kind of crazy, which is having sort of an unconference session. We've done this at the Buyer Summit, but this unconference session is sort of relatively unstructured when you look at in comparison to a panel discussion where you have people up there, you've got your set questions, you got your three guys that you're just going to ask and answer questions. This session that you're going to be participating on is really interacting with the attendees, which are not prepared, and maybe don't expect to ask or be asked questions, but really working that out. And so you're going to be part of that. I'll be in there as well, and we're going to hit up a bunch of topics for the mortgage industry, where the attendees can not only ask questions of each other and the experts like yourself on stage, but also answer questions. So it should be kind of interesting.
yeah, I mean, I think the value of that comes in right opening up the conversation. I mean, this goes back to the first Leads Con and the one that you and Noel put on down in Florida. Initially, what was that, 14, 15, however many years ago it was?
Yeah, 2007. Yeah, and that was Bill Rice, and yeah.
So I mean, but back to the Lead Critic days, right? The early stuff. I mean, this is just building on that focus, which is, hey, build a community around industry professionals and peers that have similar goals, right? And certainly in the mortgage industry, in this aspect, in the lead world, on the mortgage side, it's everybody wants to improve their business. You want to treat your customers well and make sure that you're providing a good experience for them. But then you also want to treat your employees well. But these are all things that, like these communal settings where people can interact and open up and talk through, it requires a level of trust, right? And so that's not, I think back in 2007, it was, that was the beginning of it, but it was still hard. I mean, and you see it today. I mean, when you're working with somebody, if there's not a level of trust, it's much more difficult to have any kind of breakthroughs. And so that trust is imperative. I mean, I know for our business, without that trust, it makes it really hard to introduce new technology into a marketplace, right? So yeah, it's a big deal. And I think that, lead generation world is that kind of environment, right? Where you can sit down and people can expose themselves and talk openly through issues. You've got some competitive aspects where people maybe don't talk about everything, but it will be an open discussion. So yeah, that's the format that you're putting us into. We'll probably lean on you a little bit to get us started, but
yeah, it should be fun. It should be fun, and I think there'll be a lot of stuff that we'll get out of it. So let's go back. You were a mortgage. You ran operations and sales, and then you kind of. How did you get into the quote unquote lead gen business?
Yeah, so when I moved out here in 2000 out to the Bay Area, I worked for an online mortgage company called ion.com, and at the time they were buying leads and buying ads, and they had something like a $15,000 cost per lead. Even cost per application was crazy. Crazy times.
How much was that?
It was crazy. They would buy. This is you're talking about an AOL portal deal back in 2000, and you've got a cost per application. Forget about fund of $15,000-$20,000. It was insane.
Holy mackerel!
It was insane. So, but but they also started buying Lending Tree leads at the time, and so that was my as I was in the role where I was actually managing leads and how they got distributed to the floor. This is back in 2000. So then that company went out of business, and I ended up in the online.
They went out of business with a 15 to 20. What?
Shocking. So it's actually really interesting. I moved over to a company that was eventually bought by Experian, which is freecreditreport.com at the time, based out of the Bay Area. But one of the really great things about that era, this is second half of 2000, the market had cratered. Inventory was, went from being crazy expensive online inventory to just super cheap. And at the time we had done a bunch of portal deals. And the product that we had, which was online credit monitoring, actually worked and made money. And the cost per, the revenue per customer was about $65. You had an acquisition fee of maybe $15, and we were going out and doing these great deals across the biggest portals and all the inventory on CPA basis. And it was a ton of fun, and it was just a very good timing for that business to take advantage of inventory. So I learned a ton about just running ads. Optimizing ads through that period, and then that led a couple other things, but then that led into me starting Bills.com for the guys at Freedom Financial Network, and ran that business for 10 years, and that was generating and selling leads into the mortgage industry. So continued to develop just kind of my industry expertise and understanding of how leads work. And while I was there, particularly the last 5 years. The insight that led to this business for me was, hey, there's a lot on the lead side as leads get generated. There's not enough, or at least what I felt, there's so much instinctual actions done by managers just around like kind of the things that they think they know, and they're right a lot of the time. But what ProPair is able to do in companies like ours is you're able to actually put data behind that and move those decisions from instinctual to deliberate and predictive, and that's made a big difference. And that's a driver behind the business that we have today.
Yeah, I want to definitely dig into ProPair in just a minute, but I do kind of want to focus a little bit on 11 years experience as a lead seller and lead generator. Just for a moment, since it's behind you now, how good is it? How good does it feel to not be selling leads anymore?
um, I like the bit. I mean, the thing about that business, there's a scorecard every day.
Right.
You walk into the
And that's
office.
what I mean, right? Because
It's
listen, the
relentless.
relationships you
Relentless.
built are obviously amazing, but the pressure of that scorecard
It's
every
relentless.
day on what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's relentless, and you play two sides. You've got your publisher side, and you've got your advertiser side, and then you've got everything in between. And the everything in between, as you have a growing business like we do with Bills, is the people, and of course the optimization work that you're doing, and the product work that you're doing. But it is relentless, I really respect what Lenny Tree's done, but you look at Zillow, you look at Credit Karma. NerdWallet, these guys that are coming up. I mean, this is a product focused business now, and just generating leads is you can still do it, but it's a really hard commodity driven business. And if you can separate yourself with product and separate yourself on the consumer experience side and make a better experience for the loan officer, that's where this thing's going. And
Yeah.
um, so
So I mean, over 11 years, if you think about it, and I'm looking at your LinkedIn right now, and you started in 2006 with Bills. Is that right? Yeah,
yeah, yep,
2006.
yep.
Um, and then left, around 2017. I would generally say not a lot had changed from a form, strategy, marketing strategy, probably over those 11 years, from 20,000 feet up. But what do you see? What did change, if anything? Do you have that same sort of viewpoint that not a whole lot's changed when it comes to the lead gen side of it? Because you talked about the product sort of Zillows and these different things coming in, but has it really changed much at all, or is it sort of the same thing?
Well, I've been out of it for 3 years.
Yeah.
I would say in that decade, I think it didn't change. The fundamentals certainly didn't change a ton.
Yeah.
I think what's been really nice is people have evolved and gotten smarter and better at their
Yes.
job, more efficient, and it's a more kind of stimulating industry to work in, because people are forward looking and people are willing to take chances and take on new ideas. So from that perspective, I think when we first started, it was kind of, pretty much just say block and tackle. And but the thing has evolved,
Yeah.
because everybody knows, you need to get better at it if you want to set your business apart. I mean, I look at something like, My Lending Tree, it's a little bit of a me too, but it's a good product where they were smart. They took advantage of an asset they had, which is a ton of people coming through in a transactional business, and said, hey, let's provide these people with something else to keep them around and keep them engaged. And it's been, I think, a valuable product for them. But that doesn't come if you're just doing the same thing and just kind of, generating leads, selling leads. That type of investment, that type of innovation doesn't come. So yeah, I think there's more of that. And then honestly, in the last 3 years, since you see the emergence of some of those other, of the folks that have quote unquote free inventory, right? Their ability to create an experience for the prospective borrower is a big deal, and gives
Yeah.
them a lot of testing. They have a lot of runway. Those folks are generally well funded, so they can explore, they can try new things, and so I think that's changed dramatically. But there's still plenty of just form
Yeah.
leads and leads coming through,
Yeah.
and hey, lenders need that, so.
I think to your point though, you sort of just touched on it briefly though, and maybe I'm wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the sort of the process of generating a lead maybe hasn't evolved much, but the maturity of the buyer certainly has improved in the processes that they've implemented. And I think that sort of segues into what you're sort of doing now, right? Because over those 11 years, you probably dealt with a lot of buyers that would get a lead and complain that the quality wasn't good, but they didn't. The process wasn't quite up to par either. What they were doing, and so you see, probably over the 11 years, you probably see buyers getting more and more effective with the implementations of LMSs and lead scoring, all these different things being implemented. I would think they're getting a little bit better. So that leads into ProPair, which certainly continues that trajectory, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, lead buyers are just really, like, they're really, like you said, they've evolved. They're really good. They know their systems. I mean, they pay attention to their metrics, much more so. Like, you just remember back in the, back New Century and Full Spectrum, and those guys buying leads, and it was just, just throw them into the floor, and
Right.
there was less focus on what happened. But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of deliberate actions being taken with how leads are managed, how they're worked through the process, and it's great. I mean, and it's again, we, uh, our our kind of reason for being is that we think that, well, one, you have a lead, and that the a lead is a lead is a lead to some degree, but the ability to help a loan officer, a salesperson, be more effective, um, is a big thing. I mean, you get all these leads every day, but for the most part, lead buyers have this other asset, that they're well aware of and costs them a lot, that's sitting in their office, in all their salespeople, and the ability to automate decisions around what they're doing and make their lives easier. There's huge upside there, right? And so that's the
Yeah.
upside that we're excited about, and that we're taking advantage of, and that we're working with buyers to really take advantage of, is, okay, how do we make not the leads better? How do we make these people more effective with what you're getting? And there's, well, we scratch the surface, and there's tons of upside. So but they're open.
Yeah.
The nice part is lead buyers are open to it, right? Because they know that, as much as they know their business, they know that they can get better, and they know that they
One of the things that, uh, God, 10 years ago, the easy things people would do is like, okay, I'll distribute a lead, a prime lead to these guys. I'll distribute the subprime to these guys, a purchase to this guy, and, the 250 and below loans to maybe this guy. Um, and then people get pissed off. They're getting the other, ones. But, that was sort of the sophistication ceiling for
can.
distribution, based on filters or whatever. What exactly is, ProPair doing today that really takes it beyond those simple, distribution rules?
Yeah, I mean, we do call it, like, that's the water cooler effect, right? If, when folks are on the water cooler, and, hey, I'm getting all the small loan amounts, and, that
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
spreads, and,
yeah,
before you know it, our clients and lead buyers have, the pitchforks are out for them, and the sales teams get upset because, conspiracy theories, are a dime a dozen.
yeah,
And so it's tough. It's tough to manage those rules, and those types of rules. One thing, you'll forget about them, and they'll just stay in place. And they can be self-fulfilling as well. So what we're doing, is we're taking, obviously, lead data, we're taking activity data, we're taking loan officer data, and we're basically just making that decision, a math-based decision, rather than just saying, hey, you've got to, just allocate certain sources to this loan officer because they're better at it, or certain loan amounts. We're making that a big math problem. And what it does is, when we first entered the market, our biggest concern with our first couple of clients was that, we would have a situation where, all of a sudden, hey, okay, now we're driving the assignment. Our recommendations are driving the assignment, and then loan officers are, hey, I'm not getting any leads, or I'm getting too many. um, and we monitored that closely, and that, didn't happen. And what we found is that, in addition to providing a performance lift, we're also able to just keep those fixed rules, and those things that create biases, and that, create, pitchfork scenarios, that, just able to keep them out of the equation, because this is, again, a math-driven decision across multiple dimensions, using lots of different attributes. And so you're not stuck in just saying, hey, give the A leads to the A loan officers. You can spread those out and distribute them across the team. And yeah, it's
yeah.
been.
Yeah. So you guys you said you're initially afraid that, like, maybe the system would funnel off all the, leads to a group of people that obviously were the best loan officers for everything.
Yeah.
And then these guys that aren't doing so hot are getting nothing, or whatever.
Yeah, I
How
mean,
did
that's
you?
your
Yeah.
concern.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. How do you stop that from happening? I mean, obviously, there's a rule that you're going after, which is, my guess is, generally speaking, is send the leads to where they're going to be closed the most effectively. And it, I guess my question, Ethan, is are those rules identify can they be identified so specifically that they actually do get spread out differently across the group?
Yeah, well, I mean, so that's a great question. So yeah, the kind of bifurcation, that was a concern, is that, hey, you're going to give all the good leads to this group and all the bad leads to this group.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we don't, that's the beauty of what we do. We don't rely on rules. So rules go away. And these are machine learning applications. These are big predictive algorithms. And that's the beauty. I mean, I was fortunate to meet my partner 8 years ago. And we've been 5 years before we launched the business. We were talking about this. We used to spend 2 days a week for 3 or 4 years before starting the business, just BSing and talking through how to tackle these problems and identifying the right problem, for sure. But he designs the products. They don't use rules. These are just really big data models, and the key to those data models and making them effective is that you have the right inputs, right? And so our clients, we have all first party data. You have lots of individual dimensions, and then you create new features, right? New inputs. And what you're trying to understand is how effective are people at certain times of the day? How effective are they with certain lead types? So as you have all of this data, one of the fun parts of doing that is to start to say, okay, how can we take, instead of just loan amount, how can we find something that provides a little bit more insight into how effective a loan officer can be? So it's a massive math problem. Which on the flip side, if when you ask me, hey, how do certain loan officers get these types of leads, how does that happen? I have a hard. It's a big model, so I have a hard time unpacking it and saying, well, it's driven by X, Y, and Z. It's a combination of all of those things together.
Okay, so because you said it's hard to answer, I'm going to ask you maybe a different way, because I was thinking, what sort of over the last 3 years, what are some of the things that maybe were surprising, or better yet, solidified some of your hypothesis with regards to lead distribution? For example, time of day. You mentioned that just right now, are there things that you're like, okay, we kind of thought that if we gave a lead to a guy at the right time, that it would be more successful than otherwise? What sort of stands out maybe over the last 3 years that you found?
Yeah, that's it. So as far as like a big one, and then I've got a kind of anecdotal story, but a big one, is exactly that. So we were focusing on what the lead is, where the lead came from, what's in it, what the person's looking for, what the prospect's looking for. And that's always been a big focus of our core product, which is called prospect matching. And that manages the initial assignment of the lead into the loan officers, and then any reassignments. And what we learned, is partly inspired by, again, some reading. Daniel Pink wrote a book called When, and just kind of tune us into, hey, what you give a loan officer is important, but when you're giving it to them is as important. And we see that, you see that in performance tendencies and behavioral stuff. And this brought us back. I mean, it tied in nicely for us because, it brought us back to part of our original hypothesis, which is, hey, a lead is a lead is a lead, but try to take advantage of what loan officers, what salespeople do well. And part of that is temporal, right? Part of that is just, hey, they have better times of the day, better days of the week. So that's taking advantage of that and trying to identify, rather than a sales manager walking the floor and saying, okay, hey, great, Mike Farie's blazing hot right now. I know I'm going to go back to my desk and start assigning him a bunch of leads. You let the recommendation engine take care of that. And so that was a big insight for us. It's hard. I mean, it's not easy. It's not an easy problem. And we're certainly not at the end of that journey, but that's the big thing. And then kind of flipping off of that, earlier this week, I had a conversation with one of our clients. We were going through one of our biweekly sessions, and one of their loan officers that has kind of, generally a lower converter and kind of seen as, a weaker performer, as we're unpacking them and digging in and looking at insights into their performance, some things come out, right? And they say, oh, well, that makes it's not necessarily the loan officer. It's some situations some assignments have been made, some situations they've been in, some conditions they have around them that can be improved, that can make them more effective. And when we had that conversation, I was like, that's why we're doing this business, right? The business is to make salespeople more effective. You have the data to do it, right? And it's not saying, it's not an excuse for weak performing salespeople, right? It's not saying, hey, well, don't blame them. It's, it's other conditions, but it's saying if people bring will into the workday every day, then you can do things to improve the conditions under which they can maximize their performance. That's what our business is about, is just, trying to make these folks more effective with the decisions around them.
Yeah, and I suppose you had that example of like that sort of hit home when you have a loan officer that's doing really well. You're maybe the initial thought of a lead manager or manager would be to give him more, which could actually be counterproductive, right? But it helps him marginally, and the more you give him leads, it's probably the marginal help or improvement probably gets worse. But this process seems to raise all the boats, right, across the floor. And whether it's the worst performing guy, if you can help him get marginally better because you're giving him things that he's better at, then now you're really raising the waters and lifting all boats, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's right. And your top performers are going to kill it regardless.
Yeah.
Your middle performers, that there's a big opportunity there. And then your underperformers, yeah, I mean, you identify things, you identify strengths, and you take advantage of those. And this is, my partner talked about, this is what the models do is they improve your odds, right? So they take it from, if you flip a coin 10 times, 5 times it comes up head, it makes it 6 times it comes up heads, right? So you're just trying to, every single decision, you're saying, hey, look, this is a better decision than what might be happening with a fixed rule or random. And again, the nice thing for us, the fortunate part for us, we have great clients who their instincts around the business are incredible, right? They kind of know, and so this just makes their jobs a lot easier, because now they can automate within their business. They can automate decisions using these the model outputs.
Yeah. And we talked, we're sort of talking about first pass distribution, right? When let's say a lead or inquiry comes in, it gets distributed. But there's some companies that the lead won't always stay with that loan officer for a second, third, fourth pass or whatever it may be, or nurturing. Does the modeling that you guys work on go beyond sort of the first pass as well? Or how does, how far down the sort of funnel does it continue to learn?
Yeah, I mean, that's so, so we kind of have this whole, we think about this lead yield management through the life of a lead. So day 0 when it comes in, all the way through day 90 when you can't call it anymore. That's the yield management ecosystem. And so our mission is to make sure that you're maximizing the yield you generate from that lead from day 0 all the way to the end. So yeah, you see leads move from one loan officer to another. You see leads get prioritized, deprioritized. Our decisions will drive, our products will drive better decisions through all of those points. So it's really assignment, prioritization, and then identification at the end. And identification is basically saying, hey, I've got a 40-day-old lead and it's sitting on the heap. Okay, great. Well, we're going to tell you whether that lead has a no chance to close, or whether that's a lead that you should go after and bring back into the mix.
Yeah. And does this integrate? I guess I would assume with most of the LMSs like an Accelerate or Velocify Lead Mailbox, that sort of thing. And how does that overlap with each other?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we rely on the LMSs, but yeah, we haven't done one with Josh and Accelerate yet. Um, so that's one we'd like to. I saw him on the podcast the other day, so that's one
Yeah.
we'd like to do.
So how does it work? Just out of curiosity, is it when you're integrating, is there sort of a ping? Is there what? How does the talking between the LMS and your system and your rules work?
Yeah, all real time. So when that lead comes in, we're getting the data within less than a quarter of a second. We
Yeah.
turn it around in under a half a second, and then put a recommendation back in. And we make our outputs come out at different times. So we'll provide a recommendation at the time of the assignment. We'll provide a recommendation when you want to prioritize that lead. We're going to tell you what the relative likelihood of that lead is to close based on your team and then based on activities you've taken against that lead. So as a lead ages in your lead queues, we can tell you based on things that have happened with that lead, the events that you've had around that lead, we can tell you where that lead's getting better or getting worse, is more or less likely to close. So yeah, that's a constant. Anytime we want to provide a recommendation, we grab the lead and any lead data and send the recommendation back in. So
Yeah.
it's easy. I mean, from that standpoint, I mean, this is, part of what's fun about it. And, like when you have engaged clients and you can work with them through problems and they come and we're building the products, but we rely on engaging with our clients to develop the use cases, right? And to really make sure that we're applying this in ways that are valuable. And that's where we've been blessed with good clients, because they'll engage and, we give them enough information, enough analysis and enough views where they understand what's possible and they get excited and they say, okay, great. Okay, great. Well, now we know, if we know we can apply a changed value of a lead and we can apply that on a 30-day-old lead, let's do that. And then then it becomes just a quick engineering.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little shop for a moment. I mean, you've got a ton of experience, so I just want to pick your brain on a bunch of stuff. I mean, being on the sell side for 11 years, now sort of being in the middle, even being on the buy side early on, looking at all sort of the lead buyer landscape. What are the struggles that you see lead buyers generally have with being successful with their leads? Is it is it their lead management process that's and what part of that lead management process usually is what struggles, where they struggle?
I mean, it's so much better than, I mean, they're doing well. I mean, part of it is,
Yeah.
somewhat market driven, but I think um, these shops are figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
And there's also, they're starting to do more referral business, and they're getting their loan officers to be more focused on asking for repeat business. So that's helping. But I think generally the way that lenders, at least in our case, we don't know as much about insurers and career education, those types of places, but in these shops yeah, they communicate in a way that they like to. They have great tools. There's a ton of great tools,
Yeah.
software out there where they deploy them in a smart way. And they've picked
Yeah.
this up over, like, this isn't by accident. I mean, this goes back to LeadsCon Florida in 2007, right? It's like, okay, just trusting your vendors, trusting the tools that are out there, embracing change, embracing innovation. So, I mean, I think I think I've always kind of been of the mindset that the loan officer is an integral part of the process. The loan officer is also a costly part of the process. So that's, from a cost structure, loan officers are expensive for sure. That is a challenge, certainly. And any salesperson involved in the process is going to be expensive.
Yeah.
And that's why you see all the point of sale stuff coming out.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had that sort of belief that the mortgage lead buyers are generally more sophisticated than any other vertical.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because they, the 2000s, early mid 2000s, that mortgage and lead heyday. I think there's more lead gen focus on the mortgage industry than anywhere else, and has gone from there. I mean, so does that that goes to the next question. Obviously, you guys are focused on mortgage, and you're only 3 years in. There's probably a lot of continued improvement you guys have, but there's clearly a need in other verticals.
Yep.
Is that something that's in the line of scope as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for us, for sure. I mean, we want to get insurance, career education. Those are areas that we've had a bunch of discussions about. It's the same, if you have a large centralized sales team or any kind of sales team, that's where we can have an impact. So I love those. I love those. I do think more. I mean, mortgage has gone through. Another part, the challenge for mortgage, it's so cyclical that
Yeah.
in even over the last few years, when things got, or last couple of years, when things got really tough, like the clients that we work with and have just gotten sharper, right? It's really hard. I mean, those are really hard periods, right? I mean, because there's a lot of pressure. The market's not helping you at all. So you have to get really sharp with the decisions you make in your business, and you watch everything and you optimize everything. And that benefits them, right? I mean, they go through these periods every few years, and they'll go through it for a year or 2 years, and they just get better and smarter. They use better tools. They keep their cost structure, relatively, they keep costs down. So they benefit. And when the market turns like it's doing right now for the last 6 months, they're there to make it happen. So yeah, I do think you're right that in this industry that they're kind of born by baptism by fire. They've just gotten better.
Yeah. So you're going into a lot of mortgage shops and checking out their process and all this sort of stuff. From an operational side, and you're talking about sort of the industry shifts from cyclical from refinance, purchase, and all this sort of stuff. And it seems like every cycle it's targeting refinance rates, and then holy shit, I got to start looking at purchase because rates go up, and now I'm trying to shift my business over this way. And there's this, but it's almost predictable, right? There's this cycle that kind of goes back and forth. Do you see mortgage companies becoming a little bit more intelligent with their building out of their processes that can better ride that wave?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. I mean, that's at the I think everybody tries to do that.
Yeah.
And like the balance, I mean, this is why I think it'd be really tough. Like you talk about, it'd be really tough to run a mortgage business because, balancing taking advantage of a market and just going, okay, well, we're going to go after all of this business now, versus, main kind of having a sustainable business that can deal with lots of market changes. That's a really tough thing for these firms to deal with. So yeah,
I don't know how they do it, because it's like the fluctuation of hiring, bringing all these guys to try to like capture as much business as they can, and then it goes away, and now you're reducing the size.
Well, think about it too, and the salespeople, right? I mean, it's you're talking like if you have somebody that starts in the industry in a low rate environment, and they're kind of just taking orders. When the rates change, and now they find it's a totally different sales process, and it's not that they're bad, they're not lazy or anything. They're just a different sales, but it's almost like they're selling a brand new product. So you just have to learn, and the shops that can handle that. I think generally our management understands that and has enough processes in place and good sales support. Where you can work people through and you have patience with your people that you can kind of get them through that. I mean, I think the days of kind of the opportunistic shop that just goes all in on a market, and then when the market changes, that's hard for them to sustain. So I think generally it's been great. I mean, the maturity of the industry. I mean, it makes it a lot more fun, right? It's just we have peers that are thoughtful and innovative and want to try new things, and but also are not no dummies, right? Everybody's kind of making generally pretty good and educated decisions around their business.
And I would assume ProPair can sort of help a little bit with that, right? I mean, assuming that you have different types of leads, purchase, all this sort of stuff that you can determine where leads are going to go based on criteria, is that you can maybe have different groups and processes that are sustainable for different types of products.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, technologies like ours are part of that. Or, if you invest in a technology like ours, right, you're setting yourself up to be successful in multiple markets.
Yeah.
That's the type of, and those are the things that the folks that are around today continue to do. They invest in firms like ours and other new technologies, and say, great, I know this business is going to help me in good times and in bad times. It's going to make it. It's just going to even everything out. I mean, if you run a mortgage company, all you really want is some level of dependability and some level of consistency. And it's
Yeah.
really, I mean, it's because the way the market is, it's almost impossible. But you can build that into your internal processes, and you can build that into your culture. And yeah, like one of the offshoots that we've had from our businesses is just insights across multiple clients. And to your point of like, what do you see that works and what do you see that doesn't work? You tend to like at a very macro level, you see habits that are just that. They're actions, that activities that people take that are simply habit, and it's not optimized at all, right? And it's so those are like, as we start to get more into activity management, task management, when you see that and you see, well, we know why, all these calls are being made first in the morning. It's because that's when the loan officer wants to make them, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, great, right? So there's an optimization opportunity there. And so, yeah, over time, um, these folks in tough markets make people stronger for easier markets.
What are good companies doing when they're structuring their sales floor? Are they just grouping people off, into different segments? Like, I know that like, okay, if we look at like like a pre-qual group, right? I know companies will do that, and those are just doing straight outreach, and then they're transferring it into their own sales team. I think they're still doing that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously purchase, refinance, but is that sort of the most of what you see that successful companies are doing from a grouping sales floor
That's a
strategy?
great topic for lead generation world, for the discussion of lead generation world, because that, like, those people do take different approaches. I mean, I think the thing that is um, that, like, for a while everybody separated refinance and purchase. That was kind of the theme, and now you're starting to see that it go the other way. So refinance and purchase leads are going into the same teams. You're starting to see a separation. I mean, I think the loan officers cost a lot, so you want to make sure that that you're kind of giving them high yield activities, right? And so having them make lots of calls. If you're going to do that, a dialer is can be a more effective way to do that. But every shop, in like, without trying to sound cute, every shop has a different approach, and they optimize that approach to work for them. And we see all different types. So I think, I mean, it's a great topic for that's the perfect topic for lead generation world, where you can have this forum, you can have a whole bunch of people that have a certain amount of confidence in how they've done it, and just say, okay, well, what are you doing and why does that work? And getting lots of different counterpoints, and then hopefully what you get out of that is okay, different people telling you why different things work, and you kind of get some common learnings out of that.
Yeah, yeah. It got me thinking, and I had a couple more questions regarding ProPair. I had a conversation a few days ago around lead scoring and that sort of thing, and while ProPair, from what I hear, isn't necessarily there is a lead score to some extent, I suppose, in the background that's working, but taking other things into account, with lead scoring, my question is, are you able to layer on top of external data onto this scoring, or onto ProPair as well, or is it simply all internal, based on historical data?
Yeah, I mean, we're focused on the internal data.
Yeah.
Because there's so much there.
Yeah.
the activity stuff is huge.
How long does it take for the system to learn, start to sort of make effective changes in the process?
Well, so generally with new loan officers, new sources, you're going to need probably a few months of data to be able to
Hmm.
start to train a model and to kind of provide any kind of valuable output. So it's one of the that's a great. So we had when we go in and we start to manage prospect matching, starts to manage assignments. You have new loan officers who have just come in maybe in the last 3 months, and you can't necessarily make a recommendation. You just don't have enough data.
Right.
And so what we have started to do is you have a program it's called rookie rollout, and you basically will say, hey, great, as a new loan officer comes in, you're going to just phase them in, right? And you're going to give them the right mix of leads. And in order to do that, you do have to provide some ranking of those leads, but you start to phase them in, so you're not giving them all the best leads right out of the gate, but you're starting to phase them in over a 6 month period. And that's an effective regimen. And it kind of, again, it's like that, it absolves a sales manager of having to make these black and white rules-based decisions that may have a nasty downstream impact or cultural impact. It's a fluid program that just kind of
Yeah.
graduates people in.
And I would imagine when the system is up and running, that it gets somewhat normalized in that you can apply at least some rules that's in effect today to those new people, and then let it learn off of that.
Yep.
And then even taking that comment further, I don't know, but I would, do clients kind of benefit from the greater learning of the system? I know, I'm like you already said, each company is very different in their process and what they do well. But at the same token, I'm thinking, man, if I'm a client of yours, could I benefit from
Yeah.
learnings from other companies as well?
So we're 3 years in, and that like we had talked about that, 8 years ago we talked about, combining, aggregating learnings. We're
Yeah.
3 years in, and that's something we're starting to finally formalize it, and to now you have just a massive amount of data and performance data, and so yeah, we're just starting to get into that, and it's every shop's a little different, but what you try to find is things that are consistent across everything. And then, so hopefully you'll see more from us in the first half of 2020. You'll see more. We'll publish some stuff, some resources around that, and some articles and some research that we've done.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I can't wait to see that. I mean, I think, those types of that type of information about, these best practices and what really works, I think is really awesome. I mean, like Velocify kind of did that in an MIT thing with
Yeah.
the calling the leads first and when to do it. And I always think, especially now, granted, coming from my point of view with the show, is, hey, let's share information. I mean, you can teach me how to build a house, but I'm certainly not going to do it myself. And I think that premise of sharing information and best practices is good. Helps everybody just gain an educational knowledge, but then they can go, okay, have a really great conversation with the CEO of ProPair, Ethan Ewing, and have an educated conversation how this is actually going to benefit and why it's
Yeah.
going to benefit, because they already have the information. They already know it does.
Yeah, so that's so funny that Velocify study. I mean, that you can see the impact of that today.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still, and it was written. When was that written? I mean,
Oh, probably around 2007. Well, okay. So there was the MIT study,
yeah.
which did the whole thing. I think that was around 2007, and then Velocify did it again. Maybe 2010.
But so people, so you talk to people and they'll still quote, they still
Yeah.
quote those exact numbers, which is amazing. Which
Yeah.
one shows how powerful data is and how much of an impact it has on people, but also shows that, well, we should probably keep updating our findings. We see some things that reinforce that for sure. We also see some things that run counter to that, right? Or that make
Yeah.
you say, well, there's a lot more there. That was a high level. That's a very high level view, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
But
Well, it showed speed. The thing was speed to lead, right? It was like,
yep,
you have to
yep,
call your lead as soon as you get it. And
yep,
then for every second, minute that goes by, you're losing opportunity there. And it, of course, gave people a great information, but it also increased sales of lead management systems, right? Because
Yeah, for
you
sure.
can't just get a lead in and pick up the phone as fast as a system can do it. And
Yeah.
my guess is that information around distribution scoring based on yours is also going to not only provide education, but it's
Yep.
going to help people say, this is a thing I need too.
Yeah, well, that like what that study reinforced was if the concept that if you're not first, you're last,
Yeah.
and so being first is certainly valuable, but there's no harm in being last. Like again, I mean that's like there's
Yeah.
there's so much more to that story. That there's talk about like yield management. If
Yep.
you're not first, okay, it's going to hurt you, but there's plenty more you can do, and when you peel the onion back a little bit, okay, sometimes it's okay to be last. You can do fine there too. So again, that's a matter of peeling it back a little bit, looking at your data, and drawing some nice conclusions.
And if you're going to be last, have a good process that supports being last, right? I mean, in fact, being first and last is actually pretty good too, right?
That's true. So, and every shop's different and every lead's different. But it's because the Quicken model of just getting just calling right away, that is valuable for one particular outcome, right? But there's a lot of other outcomes that you can also optimize for. So that's what we're starting to get into now.
Yeah. Well, that's probably, one of the downfalls of that report is that so many people going, I just need to be first, and they only call maybe 3 or 4 times, and then they move on to the next one that comes in, which is at its core the problem with loan officers generally, or anybody, frankly, across any industry is like, I just got a new lead, bam, bam, and I'm just hitting these new leads that are coming in, and all these other good leads are being forgotten about 3, 4, 6 calls, 10, 12, down the road. And the fact of the matter is, especially in the lead gen process where someone's going online and filling out a form that's being sold to a couple different times, and maybe they're probably shopping other places as well, not just magically going to one website and then calling it a day. They may be going other places that they get flooded with calls. They don't pick them up. Potentially, they try to take a breather, step back, but that doesn't mean their interest level is no longer there.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh shit, I didn't know that I was going to get 20 calls.
I mean, on the other end of that lead submission is a person that either wants to refinance or wants to buy a house, right? So how you
coming back around 10 days, 15 later to ensure that, hey, hey, are you still, is there anything we can help you with?
Yep.
When other companies are only focused on the first 5 calls or whatever, is not a bad strategy.
Yep. There you go. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's probably what we should talk about too. What that is. And so actually you're going to be, we're going to have you as an expert. We have Scott Payne, and then we have Dan Green.
Dan Green. Yeah. Dan Green's, I think Dan's an interesting perspective, I think, because he comes from he was a mortgage broker, but he'll bring a unique perspective. So he's fun.
Yeah. So we'll get to talk about all this stuff, and people will be able to, ask their own questions and give their own answers and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully people will make it out for that.
And maybe get some skiing in.
Yeah. Hopefully you have to drive way high in the mountains for the snow. But it's not coming down in Denver. I know you definitely bring your jacket. It'll be a little chilly in Denver in January, but it should, Denver's such a great city.
That's awesome.
And it can handle the weather, and it's just, man, I like Denver a lot. Of course, I'm a Southern California kid, but Denver's fun.
Good selection. Well, I'm excited for it, man. I think it'll be a blast. So
I
look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah. Thanks for participating. Thanks for being on this podcast. Before we leave though, if someone wants to get a hold of you, should they just go to ProPair or go to LinkedIn, search for Ethan Ewing?
LinkedIn, Ethan Ewing is fine. ProPair.ai is perfect. Ewing at ProPair.ai.
Cool.
Yep. Anyway, thanks. I appreciate you help let me talk about the business too. So.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's interesting, and I think I would encourage people to reach out to you and just start talking about this stuff anyways, because there's a lot of learnings, and it gets the juices flowing and thinking about creative ways to be more successful with their leads and their lead distribution, wherever it's coming from.
Yeah, and talk to our, I mean, the things like talk to our, like if somebody calls and, but talk to our clients too, because they give a great perspective on the value we drive, but then also the insights they get into their business.
Cool, man. Well, thank you again for joining. I got some reading to do. Thanks for that book.
Get it done.
And I will catch you later.
All right, buddy. Thanks, Mike.
All right.